I pressed my hand against the viewport and watched the stars burn. They weren't really burning, of course. Stars don't burn the way fires do. But when a battle station the size of a small city tears itself apart, the debris field catches the light in a way that looks almost peaceful, almost beautiful. 2,400 people had just become that light, and I was the only one left to watch it happen. My name is Sergeant Yael Oren, United Earth Defense Corps, and I was floating in zero gravity inside a broken section of hull with 3 cracked ribs, a ruptured eardrum, and frostbite eating through my left glove. The battle was over. It had lasted 11 minutes. The Kethvar had needed 11 minutes to reduce battle station vigil to a memory. I didn't fight them when they came for me. I was too busy counting the dead to bother resisting. I woke up on a slab of cold metal in a room built for creatures twice my height. Everything about the chamber was enormous, in a way that felt deliberate, as if whoever designed it wanted visitors to feel small. The ceiling was at least 6 meters above me. The walls pulsed with soft blue light that moved like something breathing. The air smelled like ozone and iron, and it was about 4 degrees colder than I would have liked. I took inventory of myself the way the Corps trained us to do. Ribs cracked but not punctured. Eardrum ruptured on the left side, which meant the world had a permanent low hum to it now, like a radio tuned between stations. Frostbite on 3 fingers of my left hand, a deep cut above my right eye that had been sealed with something I didn't recognize. They had treated me. That was the first interesting thing. Through a transparent membrane along the far wall, I could see figures observing me. They were tall and gray-green, moving with a slow deliberateness that reminded me of deep-sea footage I had watched as a child. One of them kept replaying a hologram in the air beside it, and I could just make out what it showed. A human figure crawling through wreckage with one leg dragging behind it uselessly. I realized after a moment that the figure was me. They had never captured one of us before. I understood that immediately, in the same way you understand the temperature of a room when you walk into it. Every other species the Kethvar had encountered had either surrendered when the math became clear, or died in a way the Kethvar understood. Clean defeats. Rational outcomes. We had given them neither, and they were trying to figure out why. Vorketh came alone. He was enormous, even by Kethvar standards, 7 feet of scaled gray muscle, wearing no armor, carrying no visible weapon. The scientists outside the membrane scattered when he appeared. The room felt smaller when he entered it, which should have been physically impossible given his size, but somehow was not. He moved the way very powerful things move, without urgency, without hesitation, as if the concept of being rushed had simply never occurred to him. There was a translation device behind my left ear. They had placed it there while I was unconscious, a small hard pressure against my skull. I hadn't noticed it until Vorketh spoke, and I understood every word perfectly. He didn't threaten me. He didn't demand anything. He stood at the foot of the slab and studied me for a long time in silence, reviewing data on a small console in his hand, watching footage I couldn't see, occasionally glancing back at me, as if checking that I still matched the image on his screen. His eyes were deep amber, entirely still, and when he finally looked directly at me, I had the clear sense that I was being genuinely examined, not as an enemy, but as a question he was trying to answer. Then he asked it. What are you? Not who, not which species, which designation, which system, what? I tilted my head. He tilted his head at the same moment, a small mirror of my motion, and I had the sudden absurd thought that the most powerful military commander in 400 star systems and I were 2 creatures who had never met before, doing the same confused gesture at the same confused moment. What does your data show? I asked. He looked at his console. He read slowly, as if translating not just language but concept. No natural armor, no venom, no echolocation, no thermal vision. Your skeletal structure is brittle. Your healing rate is... He paused. Slow. Your young require years of direct care before they can sustain themselves. By every biological measure we have applied to 400 species, you are not built for survival, let alone combat. And yet, I said. And yet, he agreed quietly. I told him about Earth, not the coordinates, the story of it. I told him about a planet that had been frozen, scorched, flooded, and shaken apart every few 100,000 years, and how every time it changed, The creatures living on it had to change with it, or disappear. I told him how most of them disappeared. I told him about the species that looked like us once, back when the world was young, and how those species were stronger and faster and better suited for what the world was then, and how they no longer existed, how we were what was left after everything else had been tried and discarded. I told him we did not have armor or venom or speed. What we had was something harder to measure. We had the ability to look at a situation that was trying to kill us and refuse, on some deep wordless level, to believe that it would. That is not a survival mechanism, Vorketh said. That is a cognitive failure. Yes, I said. It is, and it has kept us alive for 200,000 years. He was quiet for a while, then he pulled up a hologram between us. A recorded battle, one I recognized. A soldier at a fire control station, with both legs crushed beneath collapsed equipment. The soldier had remained at that station for 14 hours, directing fire, keeping 3 gun emplacements operational through sheer focus. The soldier died when the station lost oxygen, not before. Your scientists classified this as an anomaly, Vorketh said. A stress response. A failure of the body to signal the mind that it should stop. We have a different word for it, I said. He waited. We call it duty, I said. It means you have decided that something matters more than your own comfort. More than your own survival sometimes. The soldier at that station knew the calculation. She knew what the outcome was likely to be. She stayed because the 3 gun emplacements mattered more to her than leaving did. He looked at the hologram for a long time without speaking. Your species does this voluntarily, he said finally. Regularly, I said. He showed me 2 more records. One was a crew who had flown a crippled ship directly into his secondary weapons array, destroying it. No distress call, no final transmission. Just a choice, made together, in the last few seconds they had. The Kethvar had initially logged it as a navigation malfunction. I explained that they had made a decision. I explained the word sacrifice, that it meant giving something you could not get back, for the benefit of people you might never meet. He asked me what those people gave in return. I told him nothing. He asked why anyone would accept that arrangement. I told him that was the wrong way to look at it. It wasn't an arrangement. It was a belief. A belief that the people who came after you deserved a world worth living in, and that making it so was worth any price. He set the console down on the slab beside my feet. He looked at me with those amber eyes and said something I did not expect. How long have your people been at war? In your recorded history? I thought about it honestly. Almost continuously, I said. For about 5,000 years. With whom? Mostly each other. The silence that followed was the longest one yet. You practice, he said. It wasn't a question. We practice, I agreed. He showed me the map 40 minutes later. It appeared in the air between us, a tactical display of his armada's current formation, and moving toward it from the direction of humanity's remaining systems. 22 small vessels, arranged in a pattern that his generals had flagged as suicidal. His mathematicians had modeled the engagement 40 times. In every model, those 22 ships were destroyed within 6 minutes of entering his kill zone, having accomplished nothing measurable. He wanted my read. I looked at the display for a long time. I looked at the formation, the spacing, the timing of their approach vector. I looked at where they were headed and what they were headed toward, and I felt something warm and quiet open up in my chest, because I knew exactly what I was looking at. Those 22 ships were not an attack. They were noise. In every human military tradition, in every era of our history, the oldest trick we had ever learned was this: be loud in one place so that something quiet can happen somewhere else. We had been doing it since before we had metal, since we were creatures moving through tall grass, throwing rocks at one tree so the hunter could circle around to the other side. I didn't tell him that. I said, "Your generals are right that those ships can't win a direct engagement." He nodded slowly. I said, "I wouldn't be watching those ships." The alarms started 11 seconds later. Not from the direction of the 22 vessels, from inside his own formation. 3 Kethvar resupply dreadnoughts, enormous vessels that carried the fuel and ammunition that kept his armada operational, suffered catastrophic simultaneous reactor failures at precise 30-second intervals. Not accidents, not malfunctions. The intervals were too clean. The targeting was too specific. His command center erupted. Officers moved in every direction. Communication channels opened across the room in streams of urgent harmonic sound. Vorketh did not move. He stood completely still and looked at me across the chaos with an expression I could not fully read, because it was the first time I had seen it on his face. He was updating something, some internal model he had built of the universe, in which things had always gone a particular way, was being quietly revised. They were inside your formation, I said, months ago, inserted in salvage vessels that had already been through your inspection protocols. They have been waiting. He absorbed this without visible reaction. For months, he said. We're patient when it matters, I said. More patient than you might expect from a species that practices war the way we do. He sat down. For the first time since he entered the room, Vorketh sat down, lowering his enormous frame onto a bench along the wall and resting his hands on his knees. The alarms were still running. The chaos was still happening around us. He seemed entirely removed from it, present with it, but not consumed by it, which was its own kind of impressive. He looked at me for a long moment. Then he asked it again. The same question, softer now, and with a different weight behind it, as if the first time he had been asking for a category, and now he was asking for something that didn't have a category yet. What are you, Exie? I thought about the 22 ships that had gone in loud so something quiet could happen. I thought about the soldier at the fire control station and her 14 hours. I thought about the crew who had made a decision together in the last few seconds they had. I thought about 5,000 years of fighting, mostly each other, and all the things we had built in between those wars. The music and the medicine and the cities and the children, because we needed something worth the fighting. I thought about the 400 civilizations that had looked at the numbers and accepted what the numbers said, and I didn't blame them. The numbers were very clear. The numbers had always been very clear to us too. We just had never been particularly good at listening to them. We are the thing that every planet in your empire has been waiting for, I said. Not because we are stronger than you. Not because we are faster or smarter or better equipped. We are not, and we know it. And it has never once been enough to stop us. I let that sit for a moment. We are the species that looked at 400 conquered civilizations and saw 400 chances that had not yet been taken. He was quiet. Outside the viewport, somewhere in the dark between his disabled dreadnoughts and the systems we were still fighting to protect, 22 small ships were doing their best to go out clean. I hoped some of them made it. I hoped the people on them knew that what they had bought with their noise was worth the price. I hoped they never doubted it. Vorketh rose from the bench. He gave an order I did not fully understand, and 2 of his officers appeared and waited at the doorway. He crossed the room and stopped, just before reaching me, looking down at my face for one more long moment. I will think, he said. He left. The officers returned me to the examination chamber, and I was alone with the viewport and the dark, and the slowly dispersing debris of what had been, 11 hours ago, a living station full of living people. I pressed my hand against the cold glass, not the frostbitten one, the good one. I thought about what I had told him, and I decided it was true, every word of it. We were not the fastest thing in the galaxy. We were not the strongest, not the most advanced, not the most ancient. We were a young species from an unstable planet, who had spent most of our history fighting each other, building things, losing things, and refusing, with a stubbornness that had no rational justification, to accept that the story was over. 400 civilizations had accepted the math. We had read the same math and started looking for the error. I stayed at the viewport for a long time, watching the stars that were not burning, thinking about the people who had become that light. Then I straightened my back, took a slow breath through the pain in my ribs, and waited. We were not finished yet.